Good morning. Ooh. Good morning. Good morning, folks. Ethan Nash here. Welcome to another episode of the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I got a short one for you today. Quick hitting, actionable, something that I hope you can take right away and implement in your management practice. So, anyways, folks, before we get started, I just wanted to mention that 60% of our listeners, over 60% of our listeners actually, are not currently subscribed to our podcast, which is a shame. So, could you do us a favor? Like, honestly, this is doing us a big favor here. And maybe it's doing you a favor as well. But if you could go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or both for extra credit and hit the follow button. It's either going to be in the left-hand corner of the podcast page or the right-hand corner, depending on if you're on Spotify or Apple. But subscribing to the podcast, it helps grow our podcast. It helps other listeners find us and make sure that you will never miss out on anything that we post on the podcast. And isn't that just dandy? Don't you want that? And, I can almost guarantee that if you are to subscribe to our podcast, it's going to make your life at least 0.7% better. At least. And for a bonus, if you want to give us a review, that would be cool as well. That also helps grow our podcast. So, give us a glowing review or a mediocre review, right? Doesn't matter. We're open to the feedback. So, please and thank you. Now, for today's episode, folks, I want to talk with you about what we call the Challenge-Competency Continuum. Now, this is a framework, and it's a tool that leads to some important questions that you can be asking your employees, your team members, during your one-on-one meetings with them. So, to lead into this discussion, I want to share with you the 4 main sources of workplace morale. We've talked about this in other episodes, so I will be as brief as I'm able to here, which is not my strong suit. The 4 main sources of morale. All right. So through a lot of research that we've done at Nash Consulting and the reviewing research and our experience working with a bunch of different organizations and yada yada yada, we've identified there are likely these 4 major sources of morale. Okay? The 4 sources are one's individual experience, individual outlook is going to impact that person's morale. The second factor is your coworkers, right? The awesome or not so awesome people you work with every day will likely impact your morale. The third bucket is the work itself. The actual work that I am doing is going to impact my morale. And the last bucket and the biggest source of morale that we think is about 60% of the morale picture is leadership, is management. Management, and typically our direct manager, has the biggest impact on our morale. In fact, Gallup has shown that one's direct manager accounts for 70% of the variance of an employee's engagement. And of course, as we know, morale and engagement, they are linked. Now, the idea with these 4 buckets is they're not equally important. For example, individual outlook, we say that might be about, 10% of one's morale. Your coworkers, that might make up around, we'll say anywhere between 10 to 15% of your workplace morale. And the work itself, maybe that makes up anywhere from 15 to 20% of your workplace morale, with the rest coming from leadership, from management. But here today, I want to talk a bit about the bucket of the work itself, the work that I'm doing that will impact my morale. Okay, so there are 4 ways the work is going to impact one's morale. Number 1, I actually enjoy what I do. Okay, let's start there. It matches my skill set. I'm actually kind of good at it. Number 2 is the Challenge-Competency Continuum, where I feel both somewhat challenged in my job and I feel somewhat competent. I'm going to circle back to this one because this is going to be a focus for us today. Number 3, my work feels important. Right? I'm actually doing some good in the world. What I do supports the mission of the organization, so on and so forth. Right? There's meaning in what I do. Okay. Now this one's really cool. This one's really important. Right? As managers, as leaders, we need to look for ways that we can help our employees understand the important, significant meaning of their work. And I recognize that this could be maybe difficult for some of us to pinpoint and articulate. But I tend to think that in most jobs, in most of them, if we can really dig deep, we can figure out and help our employees understand that there is some significance to what they do. I'll give you a couple examples here. So they did this study with bus drivers, and basically they took a bunch of bus drivers in an unnamed city, and they measured their level of felt meaning and purpose in their job. And they found that it was quite low. Sad, right? The next thing they did is the researchers went out and collected testimonies from regular commuters on these bus drivers' bus. And then they brought these testimonies to the bus drivers. And these ranged everywhere from, hey, you know what? Because of what you do, you're the one that's allowing me to get an education. Right? Without you, I wouldn't be able to get to and from school. You're the reason why I'm able to support my family. I'm a single mother. I work 2 jobs. I rely on the bus. So it was things like this. And after the bus drivers were able to read some of these testimonies, their sense of purpose and meaning in their job increased dramatically. And 6 months later, a year later, their sense of purpose and meaning in their job stayed at a higher level. I think that's pretty cool. Another quick, example here, and I don't know if this is totally true or not. I like to think it's true, but there's this story, of course, where John F. Kennedy, as president, was visiting NASA. And so the president was walking around, and he casually walked up to a janitor there and asked the janitor, hey, what do you do for NASA? And the janitor replied, I'm helping put a man on the moon. Right? So I think that regardless of the job that people do, we can help them connect what they're doing to the overall mission and to some purpose that they have in this role. Okay, so that is all about the work feeling important. So again, the 4 ways the work impacts morale is I enjoy what I do. It actually matches my skill set. I'm kind of good at it. There's the Challenge-Competency Continuum, which I'll come back to. Number 3, the work feels important. Number 4, hey, the organization I'm working for is successful, right? It has a good reputation. it achieves meaningful things, it's doing well, doing positive things in the world, so on and so forth. Now, today, I want to specifically focus on the Challenge-Competency Continuum, and I'm hoping this quick monologue will add some questions that you can start asking in your one-on-one meetings with your employees. So the Challenge-Competency Continuum, again, this means I feel both challenged at my job and I have some level of competency in it. So imagine this line, right? This continuum. At one end, it says, I feel challenged. At the other end, it says, I feel competent. Now, most people, not everybody, but most people prefer to be somewhere in the middle of this continuum, a balance between feeling challenged in their job and feeling competent in their job. In fact, we find that the highest performers actually tend to live slightly to the challenge side. So maybe not even right in the middle, but slightly more challenged. And I'll come back to that piece as well. But here's the kicker. You should know where your employees are at on this continuum. And here's something for you to ponder. How would you find out? How would you find out where they're at on this continuum? You ask them. Imagine that. So, during your one-on-one meetings with your employees, I encourage you to ask them these 3 questions. First, draw the continuum. Draw a line. It says, I feel challenged on one end of the line. It says, I feel competent on the other end of the line. And ask them, hey, where are you at on this continuum? Like, say, over the last 3 to 6 to 12 months, where would you put yourself? Would you put yourself slightly on the challenge side, slightly on the competent side, way over on one side or the other, right in the middle? Where would you put yourself? So let them select that. Then the next question you might ask would be, where would you like to be? Would you like to be further towards the challenge side, further towards the competent side, further towards the middle? You get the point. And the third question you can ask them at this point, and you might have been able to guess this, is how can I help? How can I help you get to where you would like to be on this Challenge-Competency Continuum? Now, if you asked one of your employees, hey, where would you put yourself on this continuum over the last 6 months? And they answered, I'm pretty close to all the way to the challenged side. How do you think they might be feeling in their job if they're all the way to the challenged side? Perhaps stressed? Overwhelmed? Like they don't have the time, the tools, the resources, the skills to do their job? Maybe they don't feel like they've accomplished anything at the end of the day. And how about if they landed all the way to the competent side? Like, I feel super, super competent in this job, hardly ever challenged. How might they be feeling? Bored, perhaps? Maybe even apathetic? Now, what's interesting here is that scientists, smarty pants scientists, have figured out that both of these extremes, all the way to the challenge side or all the way to the competent side, both of these can overactivate our sympathetic nervous system. And when our sympathetic nervous system is activated, it tends to shut down learning, personal growth, and just optimal performance overall. Okay, so the sympathetic nervous system is a network of nerves that helps our body activate its fight or flight response. So isn't that interesting? Both of these extremes can put us into that fight or flight response. So, again, all that to say, I really encourage you to have this conversation with each and every one of your employees. And maybe it's a regular conversation, like maybe quarterly or a couple times a year. You're following up with them. You're drawing the Challenge-Competency Continuum. You're having this conversation with them. Hey, where are you at? Where would you like to be? How can I help you get to where you would like to be? Now, to add to this piece here, as I said earlier, that we find that when people are performing at their highest, they tend to live slightly more towards the challenge side. And that doesn't mean that people necessarily want to be slightly more towards the challenge side. Maybe they want to be right in the middle, or maybe slightly towards the competent side. I'm just saying that they find that we perform at our best when there's an intermediate level of stress because of the challenge we're facing, and it activates us to perform at a high level. So one way to think about this or visualize this is through this model, I suppose is what it would be called, but this model is called the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve. So the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve. So what is this? It's actually kind of hard to explain, so let me just ask my AI assistant how to explain this. ChatGPT, can you explain to my podcast listeners what the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve is?
Sure. The Yerkes-Dodson stress curve is a concept from psychology that explains the relationship between stress and performance. It shows that there's an optimal level of stress that can actually help you perform better. Think of it as a curve shaped like an upside-down U. At low levels of stress, you're too relaxed, and your performance tends to be lower because you're not really motivated or focused. As stress increases, you become more alert and productive, and you reach your peak performance at a moderate stress level. But once stress becomes too high, you start to feel overwhelmed, and your performance drops because you're too anxious or distracted to focus. In short, a little bit of stress can help you perform better, but too much stress can be harmful. The key is finding that sweet spot where you're challenged, but not overwhelmed.
Gosh, she's so smart. So there you have it, right? Basically, the idea is some level of stress helps us perform at a high level. And this might be something to discuss with your employees as well, right? Helping them maybe reframe some of their stress they might be experiencing as an opportunity to perform at a high level. Now, of course, the key here is that too much stress is not good either, right? So again, this is just a conversation that you're having with your employees to understand where they are at in their job, how they are feeling about their job. And it opens up a conversations to better understand what are some tools, resources, adjustments you and them can add or make to get them to the level that they would like to be in their job. The last thing I want to say here is that in the past, I've avoided asking some of my employees this question. Where would you like to be on this challenge competency continuum, and how can I help you get there? Because I was afraid that their suggestion for how I could help them get there was not something that I had the power or control to make happen. I didn't want to ask a question and then get an answer that I wasn't able to do anything with. Now, I've since rethought that approach, and I just would like to encourage you all that it's okay to ask the question even if you can't do anything about it right now. I think it shows a lot of respect and care to your employees to at least open up the conversation and then maybe set some of these objectives as goals for the future, even if you can't do anything about them right now, right? Getting at least, this conversation out on the table is a really good starting point. So, have this conversation with your employees. Ask them about the Challenge-Competency Continuum. Where are you at with this? Where would you put yourself on the Challenge-Competency Continuum? Where would you like to be? And how can I help you get there? I hope this is a helpful tool for you. Give it a shot. Put it into action. And that is all I have for you today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Hey, folks, wait. Don't go yet. Please, stay with me for 1 second here. I want to let you know about a couple cool little goodies that we have available for you. If you dig this podcast, you will probably also dig our Managing with Mind and Heart newsletter. This is a monthly newsletter where we share articles that we write about, hey, how to thrive as a manager, how to lead teams that are characterized by high morale, engagement, psychological safety, care and respect, collaboration, and high performance. You can sign up for this newsletter by texting the word leading to the number 66866. Additionally, you can go to our website and sign up for the newsletter there. Our website is www.nashconsulting.com. And of course, if you're not already aware, we have our cornerstone program for leaders and managers, and it is called Managing with Mind and Heart. Go figure. This program is something that we often bring into organizations to work with all their leaders on helping them get aligned and singing off the same sheet of music with best practice management skills and behaviors. We've brought this to hundreds of organizations at this point with really good results. And if you are not able or inclined to bring our program in-house, twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, we offer this 6-day Managing with Mind and Heart leadership development program online for anybody that would like to sign up and join us. To learn more about this online course and to register, you can go to our website. Once again, that's nashconsulting.com. Or send us an email at contact@nashconsulting.com. All right, that's all. That's it. See you later. Bye.